Bitcoin and energy go together like two peas in a pod.
Everybody knows that, Dad.
Yeah, well, did you know that a 12 gauge shoots very violently? What's going on, Digital Wildcatters? Welcome to another week of Big Digital Energy, former BDE. We're missing. This may be the first week Chuck's ever missed. You might have missed some shows previously.
No, you and I have done some shows together.
Okay.
I mean, speaking of prostate, we got to talk about Chuck's accident this weekend.
Is it contagious?
All I know is I saw pictures of Chuck on Twitter in his boxers, and I was like, yeah, I'll shut Twitter for the weekend.
He had an angry tweet this morning.
Did he?
Yeah.
About what?
Glendale should never get the Super Bowl again. It was a shit show.
Oh, wow. That's harsh criticism from the man.
I mean, whatever, Chuck. I mean, living the lavish life.
Sounds like a pretty privileged first world complaint. So
I like the money line bet at 25,000 for the kicker that missed the field goal in the first half. I was asleep, so I didn't actually see it.
Yeah, did he hit that? Was that his bet?
He hit the winner. No, he didn't hit. The bet was at a 25,000 money line that, what's his name?
The Chiefs kicker?
Yeah.
I don't know his name. He's got long hair.
Beckner or something.
Yeah.
Would win the MVP.
Oh, gotcha.
You miss a field goal, you're probably not going to.
Yeah, he dinked one off of the
totally
hill of competition from.
Hard to win MVP if you're dinking them off the uprights. But anyways, yeah, so obviously at the Super Bowl, Chuck was representing DW at the Super Bowl. But while he was gone, we were holding it down on Energy News.
That's right.
What do we have? What do we have first up, Mark?
We don't have an edgy hoodie, but in honor of today is pitchers and catchers reporting Eve Eve. I will be obnoxiously obsessed with baseball for the next 8.5 months. So,
all right.
Oh, speaking of, before we get into this, y'all see the premature electrification ad at the Super Bowl?
Yeah, I did.
This shit was genius. Like, I appreciated that as a content creator. And now I want to make a spoof of it, of premature electrification, but do it from like oil and gas point of view of like what happens when you have premature electrification. So anyways,
just ask Bernard Looney at BP about premature electrification.
I didn't, that's a good one. I didn't see the ad, or I didn't see all the other ads, but it was anecdotally rated from what I picked up as the winner.
No,
the unofficial winner.
It made me
Absolutely.
laugh. That's hard to do. So, all right.
There was a Substack recently published by a well-known investigative journalist, Seymour Hersh, who is a young 85 out there doing the true investigative journalist work, talking about an operation that was planned secretly with the Navy Salvage Dive Team in cooperation with the CIA and certain elements of the State Department and another interagency international security committee about the planning of the U.S. bombing of the Nord Stream pipeline.
Yeah, pretty bold claim to start off with. But one, I want to give my respects to this dude. This is what I love about Substack. Like, you can get to true investigative journalism instead of just the
for now
sugar-coated. Yeah, for now.
Yeah, I can't believe he hasn't been turned off. But I read the article, and while it's only one, he has one source. It seemed way too specific to be, I mean, could be totally fake. I mean, I don't know because I can't substantiate it, but it seems pretty damn real to me.
Yeah, I mean, just in the types of information and how specific it was, it seemed pretty elaborate for someone to make all of that up. Is that what you're saying?
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of back and forth, apparently, as alleged by this person with direct operational knowledge of the planning and execution, that, they were going to figure out a way to do it where there would be less of a chance that
no fingerprints.
No fingerprints and no finger pointing at the U.S. And there was actually an operational change, a pretty difficult one in the middle of the planning process, and that was to have the ability to drop a sonar buoy to be able to detonate the devices, because the original plan was to have them detonate 48 hours after this.
Right.
There's
Just on a clock.
NATO exercise, the ball tops, that takes place in June. They do it under the cover of ball tops, and then 48 hours later, when everybody's off the scene and there's no safety risk, then the bombs just detonate. But there was an operational change. There was a lot of fretting and frustration over this change to have it more at a time of the president's choosing to be able to remotely trigger the devices. So,
yeah. You know, what's interesting, we talked about this on BDE right after it happened because someone ran a poll. I think it was Max Gagliardi ran a poll on Twitter asking who is responsible for the bombing. And the majority of the poll voted United States. And I thought that was super interesting. I was like, why would the United States bomb the pipeline? And so a lot of people already seem to think that it was the U.S. that did it. Now you have this pretty detailed report, which I think it's also worth noting that Seymour Hersh, you know, this guy, I don't know him, so I can't speak to it. But from what I saw on Twitter, he's got a very, he's a valid guy. Like, he's got a good reputation, right? So
he's credible.
Yeah, he's credible. Now he's also 85, so he could just be senile as fuck and just,
or he doesn't give a fuck. And if he's gonna get suicided for this,
yeah,
he's lived a good life.
Yeah, for sure. I mean,
but to your point, Kurt, and I think I mentioned this to you, Colin, before we came in, there's a lot of specificity and a lot of detail. And Doomberg wrote a Substack over the weekend that basically said, see more, need to see more.
Yeah.
Or something to that effect. And one of the things that they raised, that Doomberg raised, was, you know, this is against AP standard because it's reliance on a single source. There's no multiple sources confirming, right? So he is theoretically taking a risk, right? And the implications are, again, as they wrote, potentially more than significant with respect to kind of the peril for the administration, the president in particular being an impeachable thing and removal from office type of response.
Yeah,
because
I mean,
there was
you gotta think, like, what's the chances of getting multiple sources on a topic like this?
I mean, the ramifications for if it is the United States are huge. But let's go back to one thing that I think is interesting. Side note is, if you think about journalists back in his Seymour's days, even maybe even our generation, Mark, to some degree, you go into journalism to report the news. But if you talk to journalists today and ask them why they're in journalism, they say, I want to change the world. So journalism has changed from, I'm here to just report the facts, ma'am, to I'm here to create a narrative.
Yeah.
Seymour maybe is like, hey, fuck it. Let's just talk a narrative. I've got some good information. Let's throw it out there.
Yeah.
But he's credible. So it'd be interesting. I do agree with Doomberg's article about we need to see more.
Yeah.
But fuck, if it's true, this is some big ass news.
You got to think that he thinks his source is pretty credible as well, too, if he's willing to stick his neck out there, right? So, yeah, you know, talking about journalists, I've lost so much respect for journalists, especially like when they put me on as like a GameStop expert, like I was the source. Like, that's the biggest troll ever. Like, you're putting me on international news as some like GameStop expert just because I tweeted about it. And like,
you are now.
I took that shit and ran with it. My mom's got a picture of me on Reuters hanging on her fridge of me just like my shit-eating grin.
You should keep it light like Chuck does. Just show up on TMZ every once in a while. let's button this up with a little. Let's touch a little bit on more direct energy implications.
Yeah,
this was obviously a threat prior to the impairment of the pipeline, if you will, that Putin at his discretion could weaponize natural gas, and that was NATO's, the West, and the administration's heartburn, right? You know, if this is indeed true, you've cut off for an indeterminate period of time significant flows of gas. In fact, 50% of Germany's gas comes through those pipelines.
Yeah.
And so, you know, we got bailed out in Europe this winter by
So it was warm.
Record warmth. Yeah. And there was a mad scramble to refill inventories, which were done successfully. But as we talked about last week, the Chinese are back on the market as LNG buyers this next winter. And the Europeans are only competing with, some Asian buyers that didn't have the wherewithal to secure those things. So now, have we put Europe in a potential precarious situation if we have a normal or colder than normal winter in 2024?
Well, we did talk last week about how LNG sellers in the U.S. are struggling to raise financing.
Right.
Because Europe won't sign long-term agreements because of the Paris Accords, but this might be the motivation needed to do it.
Well, what if Europe won't sign LNG contracts because they think that we blew up Nord Stream, and they're like, "Fuck you, we're not buying your gas."
Well, they don't have a choice. I mean, that's the thing, is you don't have a choice.
Yeah, I saw some people were hating on Doomberg this weekend because he was calling for like mass freezing and deaths in Europe, and it just didn't happen, which I do think Doomberg, tends to be pretty pessimistic. And
that's the name.
Hence the name, which they embrace that. Great information, but yeah, wrong on some stuff like that. But I think something that we should verify on the show, I'm going to talk about it, but we should go look it up, this is something that Senator Ted Cruz told me in a group of other people, that was that the Nord Stream pipeline was being built. This was during Trump's presidency, and they introduced a piece of legislation that said, hey, if you're building the pipeline, essentially we're going to bankrupt you. They put these sanctions on that pipeline to make sure that it didn't get built. And so essentially what happened was when Russia invaded, was it Crimea back in 2014, 13? That they couldn't move into Ukraine because it would have disrupted their gas flow throughout Ukraine. But then once Trump was out of the House and Biden came in, like within 2 days, they repealed those sanctions and Nord Stream started being built again. And that's what led to this war. That's the story according to Ted Cruz. And so I haven't actually gone to look up like the timeline of those things operating, but we're already recording.
Yeah,
Bossel.
dude.
Bossel, our podcast producer, just walked in here. He didn't know we even started the show. Fired.
Dude, we're virtual now.
Yeah. So, but I thought that was a pretty interesting comment by him. And you look at these pipelines and how much political sway they have, and wars being fought and bombings happening. But you got to think, like, if there was evidence that the United States bombed that pipeline, I mean, that it's going to piss some people off, and it's probably grounds for one on our side, impeachment of president or potential beginning of
an act of war.
Yeah, beginning of World War III, which all of a sudden we have all these weird balloons and shit coming over.
And besides caviar, I mean, Russia is. Their primary income stream is selling oil and gas.
No, so Ted Cruz said he's a petro warlord. Like that's.
We just blew up their biggest asset. Yeah, that would piss me off.
Yeah, for sure. So,
I might launch a few balloons our way.
Well, it's funny talking about. Let's talk about these balloons. Talking about Doomberg. Doomberg retweeted me this week, which I shout out to Doomberg for doing that, getting me some likes. But my tweet was this satirical narration of President Biden's conversation. And it's like, sir, they're catching on to us bombing the Nord Stream pipeline. President Biden sighs deeply, release the UFOs. Like, I think it's funny how just all of a sudden there's these UFOs and they're being portrayed. Okay, they're being portrayed as aliens by most people. Here's my thing. I'm a huge believer in aliens. Aliens exist.
Wait, question. Are you an alien?
Potentially.
Okay.
Can neither confirm nor deny that. But
as long as you're illegal,
let's think about
that's
this.
Fine.
You're an advanced species and you have the ability to travel the universe and you've unlocked infinite energy. But once you get to Earth, you get taken down by an F-16. Like, get the fuck out of here. It's not adding up. And so what's funny is this one that was just shot down yesterday or the day before over one of the Great Lakes. One of my friends and speaker, Dennis Border at Empower, plug into Empower there. He was flying over the Great Lakes and he has a picture of it. being shot down
No.
and smoking. Yeah, he's like, what's going on? He's like, I see some like airplane being shut down.
Dude, tweet
like,
that shit out, man.
He did. He tweeted it.
All right, I got to look at it.
I'll retweet it. I didn't retweet it.
Retweet it.
I'm going to retweet it right now while we're talking. But, you know, the whole Chinese spy balloon, we saw that. Now we have these other weird UFOs that we're not sure what they are. What do you guys think's actually happening?
Mark?
You know, I think there's just more awareness of certain phenomena that have been with us for a while. That
I just don't agree.
Let
me stop you right there. The F-22 has never done anything since we built them, and all of a sudden in a week we're dispatching F-22s to shoot shit down.
Right. I think it was, you know, there's some political reason that this is now kind of front of mind awareness, and there might be a little, if not a lot of truth in the humor of your tweet, right?
Yeah.
So, holy shit, all of a sudden there's all these balloons out there. There may be balloons flying all over the place that we've just never paid attention to or seen. And now is it a deflection play? Is it some distraction from something? There's a lot of other stuff going on.
I have a hard time believing this because this is the narrative that I'm hearing. The Biden administration blames that, there were balloons even during Trump's era, but we didn't know about it till a few weeks ago that there were balloons during Trump's era. I'm like, well, if no one knew at the time that balloon flew over the United States, did it really happen?
Where's the source and where's the evidence?
Where's the source? Where's the evidence? I'm like, this is bullshit. If we're the most supposedly technologically advanced country in the world, and we don't know when something's flying over our airspace.
No, I love that. Like,
I just don't buy it.
I love that we're shooting down balloons with F-22 Raptors. Like, that's the most ironic thing to me. I'm like,
with $1 million ordnance.
Yeah,
that's what I was thinking. How much did that cost,
dude?
When you could just pop it, you know?
Dennis took down his. I don't see the post anymore, but the FBI knocked on his doors like, take this shit down.
Oh shit!
Probably got removed. But
tell him at least.
But the
message
reason
it around.
The reason I thought it was funny is because I literally got on Twitter and I saw like a news report that the U.S. Air Force has shot down a UFO over one of the Great Lakes, and then the very next tweet was from Dennis. He's like, "Hey, I'm in an airplane and see this out the window. What's happening?"
That would freak me out a little bit.
Yeah, one of my Canadian buddies hit me up about that tweet I sent. He's like, "Man, this made me laugh." And I'm like, "Yeah, you see Justin Trudeau talking about shooting down that one in Canada." I'm like, "Man, Canadians are so lucky that they have the United States."
I know it was the report said he ordered the United States to shoot it down for him.
Right. My friend's response is like, "Yeah, you can't take down UFOs with canoes." So
that's right. That's right.
About the original balloon, the surveillance balloon. What do you guys think of the notion that that's, Xi's kind of inert way of testing the political will or the hawkishness of a response by the U.S.? We can encroach on their airspace, their sovereign territory, and I've got great propaganda.
I like Xi's response when we shut it down. He goes, that wasn't nice. Like, he was pissed that we shut it down. I'm like, he's sort of being that bully where the bully hits you in the arm and you hit him back. He's like, stop hitting me, and hits you again. They're always one up on us. When I thought about the balloon, Mark, I think your point of view is right. If I was Xi, I'm launching 5,000 balloons because it seems there's nothing we can do. We're weak. And he's showing it, he's proving it. And, that should.
Why don't I just have a flash of the movie Up and the old man in the house going up in the balloon?
That's balloons. Right. Yeah, I think that it's strange that, one, you let it fly. Like, we knew about it as general public. We knew about it when it was, Montana and coming over. And you let it fly across the entire United States before doing something about it and then shoot it at the coast, which I thought was strange.
Yeah, all those cows in Montana, might get hurt by a falling object.
Yeah, 100%.
Just coincidentally, where we have a lot of our intercontinental ballistic missiles in our B1 fleet.
And so
I'm curious how they steered the balloon in the right order.
That's
pretty impressive.
I don't know. That's what I want to know more about the balloon.
I want to know about the tech. I also want to know more about the tech on the Nord Stream, the sonar. how they had to optimize the audio so that it sent the right audio or signal to blow up the ordnance. I thought that was pretty impressive.
This may be somewhat inaccurate, but it's kind of this unique sympathetic low frequency wave that can get through all the other noise. The real risk you run is having all the other stuff that's going on down there in terms of audio signals triggering.
Yeah, that's the
before
fear.
You wanted them to go off.
I don't want to be the guy that's setting the bomb and all of a sudden a signal comes through and blows it up on me,
Yeah.
Well, they were very worried about Russian surveillance too, because the Russians are always looking and listening in the Baltics, and
right
with a very intensive degree. So it's
it's their big
It's
asset.
crazy. Like, do you remember the
if
story
true, it was incredibly
in Cuba a few
effective.
years ago with the we had to pull everyone at the U.S. consulate at the embassy out of Cuba because they were using like some technology was being used on American ambassadors, like when they're in their hotels and in their rooms, and it was some type of like subsonic impulse device and would make them super sick,
melt their brains,
and make them get like splitting headaches. And it was a huge CIA investigation, just like never know exactly what it was.
All right, we want to get back on sides with energy.
Dude, this is all energy, bro.
Yeah, energy is everything, dog.
Everything.
So yeah, the balloons thing, we'll see where we're at on next week's BDE, but I imagine that we're gonna have more balloons.
Since we're kind of talking big sky stuff, I've been following the story.
Hopefully we still have a show next week. We don't get obliterated by aliens.
We might. Well, we should start filming in an undisclosed location
for sure,
because people are onto us.
Yeah, we're giving out some. We're talking about Nord Stream and aliens here.
I've been following this story. Speaking of like balloons and blowing up, but there's this huge issue going on in especially United Kingdom, but in Europe over energy retailers. Consumers are pissed because like the Centricas and Iberdrolas in Spain, they're making a lot of money, and they're not making money off selling energy to consumers. They're making money off trading and selling raw, getting gas out of the ground.
Yeah.
But they're really struggling because consumers only see who they're paying bills to.
Mm.
So their bills are high.
Yeah.
And while retailers actually don't make a lot of money, in fact, there's a great chart here that says the average margin is actually less than zero. So they're actually losing money on retail.
Yeah.
But what I find interesting, and I wonder if it's gonna move into the US and or what's gonna happen, but there's a possibility that you're gonna see a breakup, potentially a monopolistic breakup of these entities. If the consumer pushback is so bad, if they're so pissed, are we gonna see the Shells and these huge integrated power companies? Are you gonna see them being split up? Because
I think it'd be pretty tough to justify a breakup of any energy company in the United States when you have companies like Apple and Amazon and Tesla that dwarf.
they're politically in the right place.
Yeah. This is true, but still, like that graphic that came out a few years ago, like showing Apple's logo and then all the energy companies that
combined
fit within. Yeah. Like just mind blowing that Apple's that big.
And a couple of thumbnails to think about it, how big they are. I think I mentioned it last week, 4.5 times Exxon. And if you took Apple's market cap, you could buy all 100 of the top mining companies in the world and have enough left over to buy, I think, 2 years of global copper production.
That's crazy. That's just it's hard to fathom how big Apple is.
And their market share in the smartphone arena is in the 60%, they and Samsung.
Yeah.
Well, this goes back to the implications on China. China and the United States are so interconnected because everything's being manufactured over Asia, especially in China.
One interesting thing that you were saying about, people over there being mad about their energy prices, but it's really the company, like they just see who they're paying the bill to. This is one thing that I've been saying for a while in the United States is like, if I'm Chevron or Exxon, like I don't want gas stations with my name on them.
Even though you don't own them.
Yeah. Like
it's terrible.
I don't want that because people are spending their money at a Chevron station and they're like, fuck Chevron, taking all this money from me. Like, I don't want my name on that.
And the flip side to that is if you're at a local level, you're looking at your local Shell or Exxon or independently owned retail outlet. There's 160,000 retail fuel outlets in the U.S.
Yeah.
Or excuse me, 145,000.
It's a lot.
60% of those are owned by families or individuals that own one store.
Yeah. Small business.
And their fuel margin is in 3 to 4 cents, 5 cents maybe per gallon.
Yeah, 100%.
You know when you
So
go on the
it's
show,
very akin to what, okay, there's the public image. I'm getting my bill from Centrica, or I'm having to go to my local Shell to buy gasoline. And that's the target. It localizes the target.
What I've heard,
so to
like,
speak.
this is before my time. Maybe y'all saw this, but like back in the day, there was actually brand affinity for types of gasoline. Like people would only, go to 76 for their gasoline because they had the best gasoline. Those are things that I've heard. I've never seen that in my life.
You don't know what you're buying.
Yeah.
What's interesting is when I was at one of the big integrateds, I talked to the retail group and they actually get pissed. I'm like, is anyone really loyal? No one goes to the Exxon station because it's Exxon. And they're like, do not ever open your mouth again. Everyone loves our brand. I was
Who
like,
was this?
I don't know.
Who was this?
The retail people, the people that run retail for the company I used to work for, Shell. They thought that their brand's like, everyone goes to Shell because it's Shell. I was like, I don't buy that.
No,
Now,
no one gives a
I
shit.
bet everyone goes to Buc-ee's because it's Buc-ee's.
No, 100%.
And they don't give a shit about the gas that comes out of Buc-ee's stations.
But that's what I'm saying. Who provides that gasoline at Buc-ee's? I have no clue. But Buc-ee's has a ton of brand affinity for the corn.
Buc-ee's.
Buc-ee's is one of my favorite businesses out there.
I have Exxon and Valero equidistant from my house. I'm an Exxon legacy, so you would think that's my affinity. I go to Valero a lot.
Yeah.
Why? Because they have an awesome walk-in beer cooler.
I was gonna say Valero stores are usually pretty shitty though.
Oh.
This one's pretty good.
You
At
like
least
that
the beer
one?
cooler.
Yeah.
Beer. I don't
They have
really
a
like
good beer cooler?
Yeah.
It's funny, like
Huge
Stripes,
walk-in beer
dude.
cooler.
One time
I thought you just loved the Venezuelans.
One time I got food poisoning so bad from Stripes, from because we'd eat out of those gas stations when I
Tamale.
worked in the oil field. No, it was a
Burrito?
breakfast burrito,
Oh,
Yeah.
and like I hate Stripes now. That was like
Bad
probably
experience,
8-9
bro.
years ago, and I've just like so.
Have you eaten anything bad at Buc-ee's?
No, not once. It's
Me
the
either.
complete opposite.
I mean, Buc-ee's is just, they rock.
dude, I go to
man.
Buc-ee's and like I like hate it. Like
Strong.
I just walk out with like a pound of fudge. Like why? Like you just fucking look good. Is looking at like they're making it right there.
they rank second.
You said this to Costco.
Yes.
Is it true?
Second to what?
Nationally.
I don't
It was a
see
national
this.
poll.
Oh, well, no one knows
Yeah.
about Buc-ee's outside. of
Buc-ee's is very
actually.
regional, but for Buc-ee's to show up as number 2, and we all
Oh,
know it ought to
really?
be number 1, but
Yeah.
Right.
Okay,
That's
what you-
impressive.
okay, that's super.
That's
cool.
impressive. Then. Well, not even like you don't have Buc-ee's out in West Texas. I didn't know what Buc-ee's was until I moved to Houston, and so like just a fascinating business. But yeah,
we can cut this out too. But when my
no,
one
we
of
don't
my
cut
daughter-
shit. We don't cut shit out.
when my one of my daughters went to college in the Southeast, and she's making her first road trip, and all the girls are, we need to make a gas stop, and my daughter just pipes up, why don't we just find a Buc-ee's? There's no Buc-ee's in Georgia or Florida.
Yeah.
Or at least there wasn't at that time.
Yeah, they're actually
so.
expanding out that way.
Oh yeah,
now,
they just
but-
opened in Colorado.
Yeah, crazy,
Amazing.
man. Crazy.
They're gonna kill it.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Absolutely love that business. So, to end off our energy news, we had a Shell climate lawsuit. I didn't see a lot about this, but apparently the board of directors are being sued, not just on a personal level,
Yeah.
right? Dude, one time this oil company tried to sue me on a personal level for gross negligence. I was like 25 years old, and I was like, you guys understand that I don't have any money, right? And that was the end of that lawsuit. I don't know if that works out for the board of directors of Shell, though.
so this is a British law firm filed in England and Wales
Mm-hmm.
against, as you mentioned, the Shell board of directors personally, so individually. And it's, from what the story alleges, it's the first of its kind. And it just broadly alleges that Shell hasn't done enough or gone fast enough with the energy transition. And we think about one of the last week's topics of conversations, front and center was BP
Yeah.
tapping the brakes and flattening the the pace at which its oil production is expected to decline, which I think we all have seen has been.
Dude, what a shitty proposition to be on the board of a company and you run the risk of being sued personally because a company
They have D&O, a good D&O insurance policy, so I'm not too worried about them. But, but it is a reason, and this has been ongoing for years now, the concern if something goes. I mean, I think Enron was, one of the. Sorry, Enron, but it's one of the companies that sort of started this fear of like, do I really want to be a public director?
Mm-hmm.
The risk is I have to sign my life away if it's wrong, they're coming after me.
Yeah.
I'll date myself a little bit, but in the larger bucket of issues around that, I remember that kind of angst about public company board service and whether D&O in a conventional sense is going to be
what is D&O?
Sufficient. Director and officer.
Director and officers insurance.
Liability insurance.
Liability, which when I make investments into companies, it's clear that, we want to make sure that there's proper D&O insurance in case, an angry investor decides to get, frivolous and sue.
Yeah.
So I spent about 18 months, almost 2 years on the front lines of, I guess, the original lightning rod ESG issue, which is the Valdez spill up in Alaska. And thank God for no social media. And I think there were only 1 or 2 cable networks at that time. But it was the first time in my life, and I don't know if it was completely serious, but the concept of limitless liability.
You know what's interesting? I'm glad you brought up Valdez. We all remember. Do you know that story?
Yeah.
We've all heard it.
Yeah.
Nord Stream is worse. And no one's talking about the environmental impact.
Because of the methane.
Yeah. Because of the methane. It's worse. Supposedly.
So you're talking about from an environmental
perspective. Yeah, we all know Valdez. We're always going to remember it because it was the first. But this Nord Stream was done on purpose by a government supporting, huge energy transition.
Is blowing up pipelines ESG.
So I think this back to the Shell action or lawsuit, I think it's interesting to watch this unfold against a backdrop, I think we can all agree, where ESG is getting some pushback. There's a lot of crosswinds out there between, human flourishing and advancing for the rest of the world to get out of energy poverty and taking a more measured approach with over-reliance on renewables and letting some of the technology come to us at a time when we can then commercially scale it. Right.
Yeah.
I mean,
I don't know what the mandates are to say we demand that Exxon, instead of earning $56 billion in a year, and I don't know what that translates into retained earnings and cash flow, you need to reinvest more in innovation. Well, what kind of returns profiles are associated with those accelerated investments? And if you're trying to push that development curve too hard.
I mean, I've had these conversations at the highest levels when I was at Shell.
Right.
And what Bernard Looney at BP said is oil and gas has superior returns. So, as we've discussed in my blog last week, I've talked about this over and over again. But the reality is you have investors on both sides. You have investors that say, if I can get superior returns at another company, I'm pulling out of you. So the CEOs and the management teams can't spend too much on something where they're going to have inferior returns, period, in the story.
Yeah.
No matter how good it is. And that's why BP is doing this. So this lawsuit at Shell, the interesting thing about Shell is they have investors on both sides. They have activist investors that say, you're not moving fast enough. And you have other investors saying, if your returns go down, I'm pulling out. So they're limited in the amount of money.
It's your fiduciary duty to make sure that we're investing in things that have the best return.
The best returns.
Yes. So
I heard one executive recently who had origins in, I'll just say one of the more progressive majors. And then we were talking about this whole transition of the business model for the independents in particular, but it holds true for the majors as well. If you've been about fundamentally producing, transporting, refining and retailing hydrocarbons for 150 years, it's really hard to pivot the business model, the culture of the organization, the competitiveness with as impatient of a transition timeline as imposed on most things now, right? If you're not generating returns, we've seen BP underperform, for example, trying to make a very significant impact in making big investments in renewables, particularly wind. And, the pushback comes pretty quickly. And then, as you talked about, you start to imperil your own well-being as an executive or a director.
Yeah.
And there's going to be consequences for that. So, I think that one of the things that this executive brought up was, look, maybe there is a point in time in the not too distant future where the realization is that these traditional oil and gas companies, the upstream players, are essentially sunset businesses, right? Once you reach the end of that runway, is that it, or can they transform into something else?
I don't think they're sunset businesses.
I didn't agree. I thought it was an interesting point of view.
Yeah, I don't think that they're sunset businesses. I think that a lot of people like to clown on the oil and gas majors for not succeeding in renewables, but I'm like, maybe you need to look at the underlying asset that they're investing in. Really, it's not that hard, in my opinion, to build and scale renewables, whether it's solar or wind. I mean, it's pretty easy math compared to oil and gas, right? And so I think that one of the biggest problems that they're having is that, not everyone, but a lot of people assume that one, we can scale to 100% renewables, and they don't think about renewable projects on a spectrum, and that we've already attacked, 40% of the lowest hanging fruit. Reached a point of distribution and market share where it becomes increasingly hard to deploy more renewables on a economic basis. And so, the energy companies may be finding that now, where it's just hard to find projects that actually make money. Whereas if you were a renewables focused company over the last 10 to 15 years, you probably got to scoop up a lot of that low hanging fruit. And I think that those companies are going to have a hard time moving forward as well.
Yeah. And I'll admit to being usually limited to a horizon that, is kind of an investment horizon way of thinking. So if you think out over multiple decades, look, the companies are all fundamentally well equipped with technical know-how. They know how to do complex research. They know how to do big remote project execution. They're just good large scale blocking and tackling skills.
Yeah.
In a major project organization.
Well, that's why Darren Woods said something from Exxon. Can't remember the quote verbatim, but everyone was clowning on him on Twitter because essentially it was along the lines of like, renewable energy is not a game for startups. Something like that. And
pretty true.
Everyone was like, this guy's so wrong. Like, they're getting disrupted. And I'm like, I got in the comments, I'm like, you guys think that Exxon, a company full of some of the most technical energy professionals in the world, can't figure these things out? You're wrong. And they are more well equipped than startups. As much as I love startups, like, startups aren't a fit to build out large scale infrastructure. It's a company like Exxon. So
there are capabilities within companies like that. And again, going back to Valdez, I was an upstream guy, and the crisis brought together expertise from around the world in the various functions and business lines. And there were some amazing, very granular experts on things like marine wildlife or chemical and natural dispersants of oil, and people working all over the world in R&D that are some of the best in their fields. And so
my favorite story,
science is not an uncomfortable zone for the majors.
Yeah. My favorite story like that is when the Chilean miners got trapped in that mine. It was a Texas boy, a tool hand from oil and gas, that went and drilled the hole and ran the tool to get them out.
Yeah.
And so literally just oil and gas. I mean, One thing I've always loved about oil and gas is we have the ability to just get shit done. So
Amen to that.
Can't think that we can't figure out solar and wind. So we're getting a little long in the podcast here. We need to wrap things up. What we got to finish out, Mark?
I assume you mean the finger of the week.
Yes, that's the only way that we can in the show.
All right, I'm gonna rename it this week to really just shut the hell up. And on the
it seemed like it was like so aggressive. Like
Chuck's rolling in his prostate problem right now.
I felt like that was like directed towards me. Like he's being aggressive towards me.
on the eve of pitchers and catchers reporting the start of baseball season, Evan Drellick, who used to be the beat writer for the Houston Chronicle for the Astros, who was one of the primary investigative journalists on uncovering the Astros scandal back in, well, the story was released in November of 2019 with
Trash Can Gate or whatever.
Ken Rosenthal.
Yeah.
Is releasing a book tomorrow called Winning Fixes Everything. And it's a deep dive on the whole decay and culture and, win at all costs attitude and the
Of
way
MLB or
for the Astros.
Oh,
For the longest time, there's been a Twitter war between Dodgers Twitter and Astros Twitter. The highest profile example of the hate from the Dodger side, who believe that the 2017 World Series was stolen, came from Cody Bellinger, who basically said back in the day that Jose Altuve stole the MVP from Aaron Judge and the Astros stole the World Series from the Dodgers. Well, in this new book that's coming out, an anonymous Boston Red Sox player with direct observation and knowledge of the situation claims in the video room at Fenway Park during the 2018 series matching the Dodgers and the Red Sox that the Dodgers were explicitly engaged in electronic sign stealing in the video room at Fenway Park. And Major League Baseball knew of that. In fact, there was a Major League Baseball observer in the room when it was going on, and the league decided to do nothing about it. So it's pretty well known throughout the league, and having a little bit of insider knowledge in how these front offices and clubhouses and everything else work. It's a sport where every edge that's available, every team, every player.
Yeah, I thought the holier than thou attitude from the rest of the league was pretty funny with the Astros.
So I'm
not like a diehard Astros fan, so
people
like,
just
I don't
hate
have any
Houston
bias.
in general, man.
Yeah,
I'm
hate
just
us because they ain't us.
Back in the day when the Astros addressed that in 2020 at spring training, Carlos Correa basically told Bellinger to shut the hell up. So
nice.
You're giving the Shut the Hell Up award
to Dodger Nation and specifically.
I kind of like that. We could interchange.
He was now a
finger
Cub,
of the week.
by the way.
Shut the hell up. Just don't say it so aggressive and look at me at the same time.
No
Kind
doubt.
of was like, damn,
Pure
dude.
coincidence.
You have feelings too.
I know. Like almost made me cry on the show.
That was a
man.
bit long-winded. Sorry.
All right.
Good show, boys.
I don't have a finger of the week. So I'm just going to run with Mark's shut the hell up. That's good enough for me.
Yeah, let's ride that one out.
So-
Cheers.
All right.
More balloons.
More balloons coming this week, possibly. We'll see. We'll see if we don't get invaded by aliens. And I was wrong. So hopefully that's not the case. Although dying by aliens would be pretty lit. So
You think Chuck was raptured by an alien?
Chuck was raptured by something.
All right.
That's the only explanation for Chuck's behavior. So, all right, if y'all like this show, leave a review for us on Apple or Spotify. We have Empower coming up in a few weeks. If you are interested in Bitcoin mining in the energy industry, grab yourself a ticket on digitalwildcatters.com/empower. It's March 8th and 9th at 713 Music Hall. It's going to be a really good time. We will catch y'all on next week's episode.